right. Well, welcome, Michael Hinton. Thank you so much for being on our land episode today, land talk episode. Very excited to have you because you are a distinguished guest, but a very good friend of mine. Michael is actually the regional VP for Region 8 for the Institute of CCIM. As all you know, we're both members of. We proudly wear our pins as Michael has his as well. Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself. I usually read a little bio, but this time I wanted you for it to come from you and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
I can't believe it, but I took my real estate license back in December of 1998. And so I've been doing this for about 27 years. Yes.
Wow.
It's certainly been my second career. I had a lot of experience post-college and college in food and beverage, managing restaurants and nightclubs and things like that. And I kid you not, when I had a friend of a friend of a friend of how a lot of this stuff happens, said to me, there's this lady, she's starting a real estate company and she's been doing this for a while. And I met with her and she actually knew me from the restaurant, and she said, you can sell. I don't know if you know this, but you can sell. And I'll teach you real estate if you teach me about this new thing called email, because I know it's kind of important
Oh my God.
and I don't know how to do email. And you're a little bit techie and you can help me with it. So yeah,
Wow.
I know. So yeah, I taught her email. We set up a database. I worked in Microsoft Access. That's, the oldest database program, which was an offshoot of Excel and all of that back then. And she taught me real estate and commercial real estate. And so I've been fortunate, had worked for a one-woman show, and then I was lucky enough to work at the world's largest real estate company for several years. I went and actually worked for a bank, which was a client for 3 years, handling a $500,000 in portfolio, all of that. But I have to say, at a company that I was the director of commercial real estate, to me, it was still, for whatever reason, it was still a job. But when I got involved with CCIM, I started seeing it more of as a career and really learning things from CCIM and understanding the business from the inside out. And it really just changed my, instead of like, hey, I'm showing up and punching a time clock and doing these things, I really saw the career depth
How
of it.
long?
Probably 15 or 16, and I got pinned in
Yeah,
2018.
10, 11 years.
Yeah.
I've always looked up to you with all the involvement that you have going on and the experience that you have in the business is amazing.
Well,
So
thank you.
thank you for being here. So we're going to start with a few questions. And especially I wanted you to be on the show because I wanted to touch, as you know, recently I got pinned with ALC and going to that conference, that land conference. It is so different from South Florida, right? It's like we have this little bubble here where when we talk about our prices per acre and per square feet, and it's like, they have an auction at the conference, and I'm listening to the auction at these, places of hundreds of acres and thousands of acres, and the price being, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, that's how much we paid for 1 acre. It's like, again, it's a bubble. It's something totally out of, obviously, like in any urban area. So you've spent more than 25 years in South Florida. What has been the most significant change you've seen in Miami's urban core and downtown land market during that time?
It reflects exactly what you're just saying. We've seen such a dynamic change in growth, and I joke all the time that God stopped making land, and so we only have so much in South Florida, and we are a elongated market. We are north to south. We only have a handful of transit corridors that go north and south between the Atlantic Ocean and the Everglades. The cities, Atlanta, Orlando, most major metropolitan areas can grow north, south, east, and west. We can't. We can only grow up now. We can't. I mean, we've hit the south end with Homestead. Obviously, the county, Miami-Dade hits the county line with Broward, and Broward, of course, has the Everglades as well. And so, if you look at historical Miami, we've always been able to go out west, go out to Kendall, go out to edge of Doral, and there's just nothing else there. And so, Miami 21 addressed that with the city of Miami that we either have to adapt and grow. If the NIMBYs, the not in my backyards, get their way, we will become irrelevant because we just can't stay stagnant, and stagnation will hurt our jobs, hurt our residents in many ways, because we won't have the tax revenue to keep the parks and the wonderful community we built here unless we grow and we adapt. So the fact that zoning and live local, these are things that are helping change the landscape and the adaptability. I think those are just critical. Those are big things.
Absolutely. Without that, yeah, I agree with you 100%. And as both as a broker and a valuation expert that you are as well, how do you assess whether today's land prices in Miami's urban core are justified by fundamental versus future expectations?
Two parts to that. One, it's still an open market. It's buyer expectations, seller expectations. That's part of what you and I do on a day-to-day basis. We don't make the market, we facilitate the market, obviously. So there's always, if there was a smooth connection between buyers and sellers, we wouldn't have a whole lot to do and we wouldn't be able to bring the value. So that's the real estate fundamentals. But when it comes to land and seeing not just the vision, but doing your homework on what can be done there is critical. So if you would ask me when I started out in my career, what's the easiest thing to sell? Land. You just put your sign up and you're done. But I actually think, having gone through various cycles and ups and downs, land can be one of the most challenging, because not only do you have to run 3, 4, 5 different scenarios and different analysis, what is the true highest and best use? You have to have your finger on the pulse of demand and absorption. Is it industrial zoned? Is it multifamily? Is it best to do a mixed use? What is the true driver right now? And being able to see where that demand is going to be in 3 to 5 years. You got to keep your finger on the construction costs. And what are these impact fees and city requirements, or each municipality? I mean, there's 37 in Miami-Dade County, and they all have their own set of rules.
Absolutely, every single one of them.
So
and I think in this new information era that we have, right, makes it even more another level of not. It's a very complex again, and the more information, which is good, more information that the parties have, but then that makes also the negotiation so much more complex. Right. And anyway, but that's another question. We'll continue. So let's talk about very exciting, your recent sale on 36 and Biscayne Boulevard. How much did that sell for again?
The total package was $53 million.
$53 million. Wow.
Yeah. I, through a connection, met the two brothers that had the parcel on the east side. I got that secured as far as a listing. Then there's the skinny piece, I call it the skinny piece in the middle, that was owned by a gentleman for like 27 years. And then on the hard corner was the old Shell gas station. As much as I tried to secure that, buyer knew the seller because his attorney was the godmother of the kid, and there was a whole family connection there that no matter what I was going to do, I was going to get involved. I couldn't wedge in there, but I was cognizant of a lot of the steps and a lot of things that went on with it, even though I wasn't directly involved with it. But it was 3 years and 3 months from the listing to the final closing.
Wow.
Yeah. So there was 3 pieces. The gas station was just about an acre. The skinny piece in the middle was only like 18,000 square feet, and then I think it was 0.4 acre was the original listing. So
what was the total acreage again?
But now you're going to ask me a tough question here. I don't know. I have to look it up. I'd have to look up the number, but
that's incredible. I mean, I was just trying to calculate the price per acre, but that is incredible. Yeah. I mean, that's awesome. So, and what initially attracted the buyers to the site, and what made it stand out in today's market?
Well, 36th Street is the northern edge of where I see the urban core. I see, we've had the design district, and there's a couple of vertical things that in the 70s and 80s that were built on Biscayne between 36th Street and where you hit to the MIMO district. But a lot of the residents are very NIMBY. They don't want high rises. They want the residential on Biscayne Boulevard. There's a romanticism there of, a bygone era on Biscayne Boulevard. Yeah. And I understand that. And, but again, with the zoning for Miami 21 and what came into play while we had this under contract, we're going to see an urban core from basically where the causeway is that goes to Key Biscayne down there at the south end of Brickell all the way to 36th Street. And I've seen some proposals where ultimately the city wants to have a walkway all the way from 36th Street all the way down to the edge of Coconut Grove, and you can walk the bayfront, which would connect all of these things walkable and help build a community, kind of similar to what the Underline has done from downtown down to the edge of Kendall, a very walkable connectivity of the community. Whether this actually gets built in my lifetime, I don't know. We'll see. But, we're in a big city between the edge of Coconut Grove all the way to 36th Street. And I think this will be a signature piece on the north end. And all the visuals that, when they have the helicopter and the Goodyear blimp and they're doing the Super Bowl aerial shots, you're going to see this building on the north end of the urban core. And it's going to stand out and it's going to be a signature piece. So that's what they saw. They saw the vision. They have not broken ground yet. The developers are working, their 1,000 group, they are working to finish up Villa Miami right now, which is just about to top off in the next few months. Once that, the majority of the construction is finished with that and they finish selling out that, then they'll move on to the sales and the full development.
Nice.
But it is into permitting, it's into planning, the construction drawings are all in motion. They've announced a signature hotel piece for it. And these things, as you know, take time. So
what is the biggest obstacle that you faced to take this deal to the finish line?
I would say, again, 3 parcels, 4 sellers. There were 12 attorneys on the deal, multiple financing. Yeah, there was, there's some big players in development in Miami-Dade. When you do something like this, it's a team, and the buyer had a team, not just one attorney, but several attorneys. Of course, the gas station, the buyer had to go to Shell Oil, which hadn't owned the property for like 30, 40 some years, but there was still a deed restriction that Shell put on a lot of their gas stations because they didn't want people building houses and coming back and saying contaminated soil and trying to go after deep pockets. And you can't blame them for that. You can't blame them for that. But they had to go all the way back to Shell to get that deed restriction off because they were going to put a hotel there. And obviously soil remediation and studies and understanding those things is much different today than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. So just because it's dirty dirt doesn't mean that it's, you can't build on it. It just takes time. So that was a big impediment to get that taken care of. And then we had to talk to the Department of Transportation because it abuts the interstate. I had to get the senator on the phone and get Florida FDOT on the phone to make sure that, the interstate and the ramp and all of that was just right. And after we closed, the buyer got a hold of me and said, there is an unrecorded transfer for that ramp. Everybody knows that ramp that comes off the interstate that feeds into 36th Street is owned by the interstate, is part of the interstate and is owned by the state of Florida. But they never actually recorded the deed. They forgot about it in the late 70s. And so, how do you go back to the state of Florida and say, hey, you screwed up in the 70s, you forgot to record a deed and it's not in public records, even though there's an interstate ramp there and no one's doubting the ownership.
Right.
But that piece of paper wasn't there. And so they had to, but that didn't show up till afterwards. So that's how crazy some of the stuff can be.
When you were marketing 36 and Biscayne, what types of buyers showed the most interest? Institutional investors, developers, family offices, or international capital? What was the bulk of it?
Really, for that kind of project of what we were looking at the time, there were probably less than a dozen developers with the experience in the Miami-Dade market that could take down a project of this size and caliber, what ultimately became a 47-story hotel condo development. There was really just getting it in front of that very small list. We had a lot of phone calls, a lot of people from New York and New England, wanting to own an apartment building or develop an apartment building here. But at the end of the day, they just didn't have the experience. They didn't have the local connections. And I had a few offers for them. And they wanted a long due diligence period, and it just wasn't something that was feasible to my sellers. And, we had to look at the resources. Did they have the depth and the experience to really, pull the trigger and pull it off? And we were very fortunate to work with 1000 Group, which has experience. I mean, they did the Zaha Hadid Tower. They've done other big signature unique projects. Now,
Nice.
are they slow? Yes, but that's also part of the process, you know.
Absolutely. Project, definitely you need all that. No doubt about it. Now moving a little bit more, let's look at central Miami. Where are you seeing the strongest demand for land right now and why?
Anything on the waterfront, that's never going to change. There's always whatever we are, wherever we are in a cycle, whether it's on an upswing or a contraction, the demand for waterfront is just, I mean, it's just key. It's integral. Can everybody afford it? No. And, there's only, I think, well, Citadel took down pretty much the last parcel in Brickell for development. And I think there's like one, maybe two others, unless you start tearing down some significant buildings, which we're seeing with the bank building that they're tearing down and redeveloping that. I mean, that was kind of a bit of a surprise. We're seeing some of the Brickell bank buildings that were built in the 70s and 80s that are now potentially tear downs and redevelopment because they're just right there. I happen to know about an off-market one there for about 350, 360 million that, it's not going to be an easy development, but to be able to double the size of the building, that's a unique opportunity there. Yeah, so urban core, walkability, those are all factors. People, we have horrible traffic at times, not all the time. I think the traffic is, people complain more about the traffic than it really is in South Florida. But, the beautiful weather we have here and the walkability, I
Oh
think
no,
is.
yeah. So given, we mentioned about how prices are so expensive, construction,
Mhm.
I mean everything. Do you think that prices are climbing, stabilizing, or becoming more sub-market specific?
I'd say I see a little bit of a tapering off, a little bit of stability, which gives us some breathing room to actually see. We have a lot in the pipeline. I just did some research on that. We have 99 branded condo towers coming in Miami-Dade in the
Wow,
next 3 to 5 years.
99.
99, and still working on the list, but I think there's another 4 or 5, so we may be over 100. Now, will all of them get built? Probably not, but I think the market is going to take a breath and assess some of these that are in development and say, do we really need this? Do we have this? What's the highest and best use? And again, we'll see what happens. But again, we're talking about people and companies that see a vision of what is in the next cycle. Like,
Right.
I know a couple of properties that are off market. The right number will acquire that wonderful development opportunity, but is now the time, or is it going to be developed in the next cycle? And, are we going to hit a soft market this fall? I mean, I don't know. There's a couple of warning signs. The 30-year Treasury went above 5% last month. That's a warning sign. And inflation's at 4.2 right now. I don't know. Like, is it going to be soft? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe we'll ride out the war in Iran. Maybe we'll ride it out. Maybe
Right.
we won't. I don't know. That's above my pay grade. But you know,
And what type of product do you see more, multifamily, mixed use, hospitality, office? What are you seeing the most in land acquisitions today in your area?
I continue to see a flight to quality, and in all of those product segments. There's projects that were built in the 70s and the 80s that are not to current hurricane codes. They're not to the flood elevation requirements.
Mm.
There's a couple of streets in Edgewater that continually flood, and that is an infrastructure issue. That is an insurance issue, and they're not going to be around. And the same thing on some of the barrier islands, North Bay Village, Surfside,
Hmm.
Sunny Isles. Those are, a tough situation, especially for some of these boutique condos that have maybe 6 stories, 8 stories that were not built for sea level rise. They were not built. Had a friend of mine who bought a condo and he had a washer and dryer in it. But then the condo association said you have to take the washer and dryer out because we don't have water capacity for everyone to have a washer and dryer and a dishwasher in their unit. Now, if you're telling somebody $1 million condo unit they can't have a dishwasher and a washer and dryer, that is a problem.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. Absolutely.
nobody. Yeah. So some of these, they just don't have the water and the sewer capacity. And so, yeah, no one wants to kick a little old lady out of the condo, but if
Which for a
you
lot of
can't, yeah,
them,
so these are things that we as a community have to address.
right.
We have to figure out what makes sense to tear down, what do we tear down, what do we maintain and keep, because some of these buildings are part of the cultural fabric of the community, and you want to keep theaters, you want to keep parks, community centers, and things that are unique to the community. You want to keep some of that is viable. But if it's not, how do you reposition that property?
Absolutely. Very interesting. And now let's talk a little bit about industry leadership. You, as a past president of the Florida CCIM chapter and current VP of Region 8 involved in the Institute, what concerns are you hearing from most, often from commercial real estate professionals and about the future in our industry?
I would say one is the disruptor that we saw in residential when Zillow and Redfin and Realtor.com came in, and the speed to the consumer of some of this data that is now permeated commercial. We're not insulated in the fact that AI is here. People are embracing it. It's not going to go away. There's a speed to market of being able to access information, but I think where we will continue to add value is how you interpret that and analyze that information. Anybody can look up what is the zoning, but what does the zoning mean?
Right.
Where are the bonuses? Where are the community overlays? Where are the infrastructure pieces? And just because it says one thing doesn't mean that you necessarily can do that. And the neat thing to me about urban land and redevelopment is most of the infrastructure, it may be old, but it's there. The fiber, the power, the water, the sewer, most of it's there. Now, is it some of it antiquated and needs to be updated? Absolutely. You go out into the suburbs outside of Kissimmee or in parts of West Palm Beach, there may not be electricity there. It may be millions of dollars to bring water and sewer lines to this development, and that takes impacts and studies, and that's certainly a difference. Yeah, I would say that no matter what, we are still a global brand. The city of Miami is a global brand. The entire world knows about it. I think as we get through the next couple of years, there will be a return and a flight to quality and a quality capital. We as locals, we think our prices are high, but when you look at what we offer and what our prices are compared to New York or Tokyo or London or Spain, Madrid, you know, we are competitive. And that foreign capital and that foreign investment, or even we call it the Rust Belt, the Midwest. It's still a good quality investment. So if you see the vision and you believe in the fact that South Florida, not just Miami, but Broward and all of our little or smaller municipalities around the area, I think it's going to continue to grow. Are we going to hit a plateau for a little bit? Probably in the next year or two, where we may have a continued growth, but we may not be hitting double digit growth. But it's still going to get better, and it's still going to continue to grow because we only have so many places to build and so many places to
Absolutely.
live. I don't see any. I see a few clouds on the horizon, but I don't think it's going to be like it's not going to be a market crash like we had in '07 and '08. I think
Yeah.
we've got a lot of good quality pieces in place.
Absolutely. And I mean, Miami is Miami location. It's like where can you get the beaches, the weather? I mean, it's we will always attract so much international players that it's definitely an anomaly, and you cannot compare that to anything else.
I hope so too. It's been great, and it's an honor and a pleasure, and I glad to be part of your podcast here and your videos, and happy to tell a little story that I have of how I got to where I am now. And
Love
I'm
it.
always happy to help out people. I think
Love
the
it.
more we collaborate, the better off we'll all be more successful at it. So,
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. Take care.
sure, you got it.